Welcome back, everyone. Catholic Champion. It is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. On the show today, myself, John Yep, co-host Michael Hichborn. We are talking about what you may have seen. The U.S. bishops halt their cooperation in the illegal invasion of America, among other things going on. Stay tuned. Boom, boom. How's your life going, Michael Hichborn?
Oh, things are going pretty good. I can't complain.
We're almost at the end. We have the statues covered up. You at your church, I would assume, as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. One thing that it's always a funny thing that every Lent, I started off as a fasting, and it turns into a marathon to lose weight, and I'm already down. Let's see, almost 10 pounds.
That's crazy. Wow. Okay. That's a motivation.
I had the poundage to shed. So
yes, you did.
Oh, thanks.
You did. And that was that came out a little bit too easily. No, man. Well, if you think you didn't have pounds to shed, you definitely hide it well. So that's all. That's a backhanded compliment. But we got a week and a half left, man. We're almost there.
You bet.
It's wow. A lot going on in the world. We have as I mentioned to Michael before the show, the good news about the markets going back up.
Mm-hmm.
That temporal reality, and you have the best answer ever. Did you think it would it?
Yeah.
So it's Trump, the mastermind, art of the deal, is working wonders with the tariffs, and we'll just pray that helps in so many levels. I am most, from a moral perspective, excited to see if we can level the playing field with China. That country needs to be economically at least put back in its place, if anything, because of just the horrible human rights abuses that go on in that country. It's you have the Uyghur people who are just concentration camps effectively. You have the phenomenon of human organ harvesting that is so rampant there.
I was making this point to a friend of mine earlier today. The reason that China is a power at all is because the Clintons made them the number one country, or our number one trade partner. They gave them preferred, preferred national status or preferred
trade status.
Yeah. So if you want to put an end to what China is, then you stop trading with them. You stop allowing them to prop up their communist ideologies with slave labor, which is effectively why are we benefiting on the backs of slaves? Didn't we abolish slavery, over 100 years ago? I think that's the problem. And as long as we are benefiting from the slave labor in China, and we continue to look to China as a trade partner, they're going to continue to be a problem. But you stop trading with them, and all of a sudden they lose their economic strength.
Absolutely. It's almost is it Reagan-esque in a little 1980s? The sense like breaking the economic back of communism, and it's Trump's not even so much doing it just like to break that economic back of them. It's more just to level the playing field over here, right? Because we are the addicted individual who has a credit card that's continuing to spend as a country, and we're paying the consequences through inflation and among other things. And Trump's whole idea is to bring some of that money back through the tariffs, which I think it's brilliant, and we're praying that it has a good end to it.
You bet.
Let's not forget too. The Vatican China Accords kind of was brought up in the news again since Cardinal Theodore McCarrick passed away, the disgraced former cardinal who is the architect of the China-Vatican deal, the secret deal that we know nothing about, and which was brought up yesterday in the House floor. Did you see that by chance?
I did. Well, I didn't see that it was brought up in the House, but I saw that there's been talk about it recently. So
it was in the Senate because our friend Brian Birch of Catholic Vote had his confirmation hearing to be the ambassador of the Vatican. So that was one of the questions that was asked to him, was about the the China Vatican Accord and how that affects the United States. Brian gave a great answer, basically saying like he would advise the Vatican as the ambassador of the United States representing President Trump and the interests of this country that they now not allow a foreign entity to dabble in the nomination of their own religious leaders.
Yep.
Which is effectively what's happening. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is naming the bishops essentially in China, right? So in the details, like
ultimately it begs the question: what was the fight with Henry VIII about then?
That's right.
Henry wanted the ability to be able to appoint his own bishops, so that so that he could turn to them and say, okay, I want a tribunal so that I can, have my divorces. But regardless of what he was motivated by, he wanted to be the one to appoint bishops. And what's happening in China? They've now ceded the authority that they withdrew or withheld from King Henry VIII. They've given that authority over to the Chinese communists. So it's a betrayal of our own. It's a betrayal of our own structures within the church.
Absolutely. It is. And which is the exact opposite how it's happened in this country. You go back to, I think it was 1790, that famous interaction between Benjamin Franklin, who was the ambassador to France. He interacted with the cardinal. The name is slipped me, who was de facto the ambassador to the United States from the Vatican in 1790, shortly after the Revolution. And the Vatican ambassador wanted to check in with Benjamin Franklin and say, hey, we want to go through with you. Like, are you okay which bishop we name? Ended up being Bishop John Carroll. Is your government okay? To which Benjamin Franklin said, we don't care. We can care less. It's a different ball game now than you're used to, Vatican, right? So that just healthy respect is central to us as America, and it's also important for the church to have its own autonomy and to be able to not be so dependent on the temporal realities. So yeah, crazy. We have other reports that we could print up like this, which we're going to talk about. The China Vatican Accord, as Brian Birch mentioned on the Senate floor yesterday, we know nothing about because it's secret. Okay.
Yeah.
So who knows? There are rumors that there was a large transaction of almost $2 billion between the CCP and the Vatican for this deal. We don't know, but we have pretty good hunches that may be the case. Any case, Theodore McCarrick, architect of that deal, he passed away. We are praying for him and his soul. But my gosh, never forget. What's the percentage, Michael, of bishops that guy's named? Theodore McCarrick personally named in this country?
Well, he didn't personally name any bishops because he didn't have the authority to, but he would put them forward as nominees. So he would go to the ambassador and say, well, this is who I want. This is who we suggest, that kind of thing. And he had, being the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C., the nuncio for the United States was right down the road. Now, we do know that Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano was very strongly opposed to McCarrick. McCarrick was a lot quieter while Vigano was there in Washington. But Cardinal McCarrick, he was a kingmaker. So he was operating a lot behind the scenes. We're pretty sure that Supich and Tobin and McElroy and several others along those lines, Farrell,
we're sure, because some of them have said it.
Some of them have said as much, yeah.
They've said McCarrick is the one responsible for me becoming a bishop. So you have some of the cardinals and bishops are doing some of the greatest damage here in the country.
Yep.
Trace their lineage to this man. Okay.
Right.
History is important. We can't forget this. So, like you said, Cardinal McElroy of DC, right? He's one of those.
He's a creature of McCarrick for sure.
Creature of McCarrick and Cardinal Kevin Farrell, who is the Camerlingo in Rome, which is basically the person who is in charge of the church in a temporal sense after the Pope dies during the interregnum until the next Pope is named. So he was a former legionary. I know this, former legionary myself, who had very close interactions with Maciel himself, and then shared an apartment with Theodore McCarrick for about 6 years in D.C.
Yep.
back in the day. So he is now in a very high important position up there in Rome. So these are McCarrick's, I hate to use the word sons, but like they have this connection to him, and it's concerning in a lot of ways. History is important, people, because it shows you, helps give explanations for what's happening today in the news, whether it's secular or specifically religious. Okay. We saw this covered by also secular outlets a couple days ago. The news broke that the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has made what it is calling a difficult decision, very difficult, Michael, to not renew cooperative agreements with the federal government amid policy changes from President Donald Trump's administration to cut funding from refugee programs. Back up. Trump takes office. What's one of the first things he does? He cuts off federal funding to those NGOs who had received grants to help resettle migrants into the nation. Okay? Cuts it off. We saw the headline a couple weeks afterwards. Bishops sued Trump administration. They go back and forth. In the meantime, the bishops they fire like 50 of their employees, and then subsequently other people are also terminated from their positions. And there's a back and forth. Well, today, April 7th, the USCCB comes out with a statement. When you saw that, what do you think, Michael?
My first thought was that the USCCB was turning around to the Trump administration and going, oh, "You're breaking up with me? No, I'm breaking up with you." That was the first thought. These queens.
That's so well said. That's almost literally how it does feel. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. These queens, they get so upset and incensed about, having their trust fund cut off, and they're no longer able to go out and have their manicures. And now what are they going to do? They're going to sit there and throw a fit and say, no, you didn't do this. I did. And I read through the statement, and the statement, it's incredible. I want to start. I just want to go through little parts of it because I highlighted it.
I had it printed up too. Yeah, it's worth it. Go ahead.
Right in the very beginning, it says, from its very founding, the USCCB has been concerned with helping families who are fleeing war, violence, and oppression find safe and secure homes. Full stop. Okay. We'll stop right there, because what they're doing is they're setting a precedent. You have to understand, anytime you're looking at a press release, you're looking at a press statement, the very first line is the most important line because it sets the tone for everything else. So this is how propaganda works. They're not saying that that's what they're doing with the refugees, but by inserting those three words or those three phrases, fleeing war, violence, and oppression, what they're saying is that, well, the work that we now are no longer doing with the USCCB is helping to resettle people who are fleeing war, violence, and oppression. That's not true. It's not true. It was true during World War II, because you had people in Europe who no longer had a home. In many cases, their villages were completely destroyed. And in other cases, their entire cities were leveled. So the USCCB was helping to find places for these people to resettle, and some of them came to the United States. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. What I have a problem with is equivocating this idea of fleeing war, violence, and oppression with people simply looking for a better life. And they actually make that case right here in this press release, because later on what they say, or what they see, what they say is a reference to people who are looking to America for better opportunities. Well, I'm sorry, that's not a refugee. A refugee is somebody who's fleeing war, violence, or oppression. Somebody who's simply looking for a better life is an immigrant. That's it. But they're equivocating. They're saying that these immigrants are refugees, which means the vetting process is broken from the outset. Because if they're making that equivocation, then this part, which comes next, where it says, all participants in these programs were welcomed by the U.S. government to come to the United States and underwent rigorous screening before their arrival. Really? All
I'm
of them?
glad you highlighted that word. Exactly. Keep going.
How do you know? How do you know that they were rigorously screened? Is this the same kind of rigorous screening process that the USCCB has for determining which organizations from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development are worthy of receiving their funds? Where we find regularly 44% of the organizations receiving CCHD funding are promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and Marxism? Is it that kind of vetting? Or was it vetting from the US government that didn't seem to actually give a damn about who was actually coming in? That we know for a fact that people who were members of terrorist organizations were vetted by the US government and brought across the border. Did the USCCB rely on those government processes to vet those individuals? Because if they did, then what they're saying is a lie on 2 counts. Number one, it's a lie that they underwent a vigorous vetting process on the government's part, or it's a lie that they were underwent a rigorous vetting process on the USCCB's account. Either way, it's false. It's not true, because we know that people going through this process were involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism, and a bunch of other stuff. We know that a bunch of criminals came through on this process. So for them to say that they underwent a rigorous screening process is not true.
It's not true, and I love how you go right. I mean, they go right to the history. Okay, in the beginning, this is what we do since the First World War in 1919. This is why we were set up. We talk ad nauseum about the history of the USCCB. And Flash, get the book. You must get the book, Charity for Sale, which Dr. Mannion, published by Catholics for Catholics, goes into depth about how the conference was formed and how it was hijacked in a powerful way to become what it was, at least up until about a month ago. It was the spouse of the federal government, beholden to whatever wishes that Uncle Sam wanted, with a huge financial benefit from it. So yes, there were some good things that I guess you could argue were done. I'm not totally throwing it in the trash heap, but it did become that. And we saw it most blatantly during this last administration with President Biden, when they were the NGO, they were the travel agency of the illegal invasion of the country, and with all the destruction that came with it, the fentanyl deaths. There were more people killed in fentanyl deaths than in COVID. Think about how we went out of our way as a church to just shut everything down. We were so concerned about the people dying from COVID. Okay, I get it, but what about the deaths of fentanyl? No one's talking about that as much as it should be. Okay. We had Archbishop Gomez and others in the Holy Father doing videos promoting the vaccine. Okay. Everyone take your shots, a moral duty. Well, how about the moral duty to speak up to stop the deaths across the southern border from drugs? Nothing there. Right. So, but
let's add to that the fact that the USCCB expressed its deep concern over the last, since Trump announced that since we found out that Trump was going to win the presidency, the USCCB has been so upset and so concerned about mass deportations, and they've called out against mass deportations and this problem of mass deportations. But the problem is, what they keep leaving off is the fact that the people being deported are known criminals, people with a background in crime. And it's not like ICE is raiding your neighborhood family's home and saying, "Ha, we finally found you. We knew that you've been here illegally, and now we're sending you packing." So far, that's not happening. What they're doing is they're looking for people who are involved in crimes, that they know who are involved in crimes, and they're sending them home. People, members of gangs.
It's so true. And don't forget, we mentioned this in the book. The very first document was one of the tidbits I love this book, Charity for Sale. The very first document to ever come out from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, had a different name, but same entity, was basically a socialist, government-heavy document, which advocated for things like nationalized healthcare, among others. Very socialist bent to it at the very, very beginning. Okay, I thought that was very surprising to me. The priest who penned it, the name is slipping me. Michael, do you remember it, by the way? It's the priest who actually penned the first document. I should put that in the comments. Anyone who can figure out the priest who wrote the first document of the USCCB is the author of it, put in the comments. Maybe we'll send you a free book for this. But he ends up, by the way, for the record, he ends up giving a speech at the Democrat National Convention in 1932, commanding Catholics essentially the moral duty to elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt for his whatever that was, his second or third term. Okay, so they were political from the very beginning in their own right. But so let's talk history all we want, right? Okay, so I love you were the words when you struck your attention to as much as it did for me, Michael, when he said underwent rigorous screening before the arrival. Give me a break. Yeah, right. We all know that. Come on. Everyone, we don't even know who's in this country, people. Okay. This is not Michael Hichborn and John Yep just mad about more immigrants coming in. Guys, we're concerned, as we all of us should be, about the poor communities who have suffered because of this. Lincoln Riley's picture has not left our minds. She was killed by one of these people, these monsters, right? They're not all monsters you come across. I get it. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you get the point.
I want to add to this. So the rest of the press statement, a lot of it's just fluff and feel good stuff. I mean, right here, this paragraph starts, today the USCCB marks the heartbreaking. And notice the
I love that. Yes.
The heartbreaking announcement.
You can imagine they are just, I would suspect that the tears, the heartbreaking was just as when those bishops gathered around, when they got that news, they had to make that announcement. They came together at DC, just like, what are we going to do, guys? We're at a round table. This has just broken our hearts. It was probably the same level of sorrow, shall we say, that they had in June of 2021 when they were deciding whether to ban President Biden from the reception of communion. That same heartbreaking announcement. But yes, how do you see this, Michael?
So they go on, they say the USCCB makes the heartbreaking announcement that we will not be renewing existing cooperative agreements with the federal government related to children's services and refugee support. This difficult decision follows the suspension by the government of our cooperative agreements to resettle refugees. So here they're talking about how the cooperative agreements were cut off by the federal government. They went ahead and they suspended and then cut those contracts. And they say follows the suspension of the government cooperative agreements. They weren't suspended. They were canceled. That is the phrase that is the word that was used by the federal government with regard to these contracts. They were not suspended. They were canceled. So the USCCB saying that we're not going to renew it is bogus, because you can't renew something that was canceled on the other end. These programs were canceled. Maybe there were a few that weren't, but the fact of the matter is that the USCCB is just basically throwing its hands in the air and saying, well, this is a moot point. So now we're going to point the finger and say it's all their fault that we have to go and find other means. You should have been finding other means to begin with. This is not your gravy train to have command of. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Or, as we said you pointed out last show so well, people remember the millions that they have received. And I think the article actually mentions Tyler Arnold from CNA, who is a good friend. He actually put down the amount. There's $100 million a year that they were receiving from President Biden to help resettle the immigrants. And those grants, as Michael pointed out last show, they have the stipulation, also confirmed to me by a friend who worked for Catholic Charities. We had a good banter back and forth the other day about this, about reminding me, as I always say, not everyone at Catholic Charities is a horrible person. There's some great work done. Yes, it's obviously the truth. But whenever you're given those grants, you are not allowed to evangelize. Absolutely not. You can't, right? So the government bishops who are the heartbreaking announcement that they will not be allowed to renew agreements for what?
Right.
To do activity, whatever the activity is, you can't evangelize an activity. So like you said, what's the point? Why are you doing it in the first place?
Right. And then the last thing I want to address here, this paragraph, while this marks a painful end to a life-sustaining partnership and our government,
keyword life-sustaining right there. Life. Yeah.
Yep. So life-sustaining. No. This has nothing to do with sustaining life. You're resettling people. Not only are you resettling them, you're taking federal funds to put them on airplanes, to buy them a car, to pay for their rent, to buy them food, without them having to work at all. So you're effectively creating a welfare state sustained by the federal government, and you're calling it life-sustaining partnership. No, that's life-sucking. You're taking money from my kids. You're taking money from us to assist somebody else. And in my book, that's theft. Welfare is theft. I'm sorry, but it is. I think that if you want to have a real charitable system, you have to be asking people, which is where they go with the next part of this. They say it offers every Catholic an opportunity to search our hearts for new ways to assist. The USCCB will continue advocating. So I'll talk about that in a second. But they're now saying, well, now that we no longer have government funds, you need to really search your heart and see if that heart belongs to God, and then reach in your pocketbook and give God's money back to him so that we can do the work that we've continued to do.
There's a subtle omission, though, even in the words you just said. It offers every Catholic an opportunity to search for new ways to assist.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the point. Okay. Mm-hmm. Before you were just doing whatever the government wanted you to do in order to take $100 million a year, while we, the people, had zero say. So it offers every Catholic. Before this, us Catholics didn't even have a choice. Okay.
People in the pews have been complaining about this very thing for decades. And the USCCB not only refused to address any of the concerns of faithful Catholics, but they looked at them with scorn. They looked at them with scorn for daring to allow them to take money from the federal government. But now that they no longer have the federal government at their beck and call, the USCCB is turning to the faithful and saying, gosh, it's wonderful that you're friends of ours and that you're friends of the poor, and now you can look for new ways to assist. You're going to beat me over the head with a stick and then you're going to beg me for money? I'm sorry, that's not how this works. Furthermore, if you really were interested in helping the poor and assisting people in a legitimate and lawful manner to come into this country and to be resettled and to find integration into the community, set up a religious order to do it with. You set up a religious order with people with real vocations, people who are not taking a salary to do this as a job, and I will be more than happy to give my hard-earned funds to assist people who are doing that work through the goodness and through the desire for the salvation of the other in this work. But
charity is not for sale. That's it.
Right.
Title of the book. We sold a charity to the government for a fee, and that's what it's become with pretty much zero oversight from the faithful, even from financial records. It's all done through classified church. Therefore, you don't have to show 990s where this funds goes, how it's really used. We don't know, right? It's part of the black hole. So this is big. And I'm glad, by the way, that they are concerned that now it offers every Catholic an opportunity, because before like we said, we didn't have a say. Well, we did have a say. Last November, 58% of the Catholic population, by the way, voted to put President Trump in order, who campaigned along with the people around him, like Tom Homan, who's now the director of Homeland Security, to end these federal grants. So if we are so concerned about we, the Catholic people, we spoke up. We spoke up. We didn't want this. We wanted to protect the people around us and our communities, as Catholic doctrine teaches, following the great example, by the way, of our Holy Father Pope Francis, who has established the severest immigration laws practically in the world, where you cross that little white line in the Vatican is pretty much like 5 years in prison, right? So,
there's one more line in this that I do want to address. The line is this: the USCCB will continue advocating for policy reforms that provide orderly, secure immigration processes, ensuring the safety of everyone in our communities. In other words, they're saying that despite all of this, we're still going to be lobbying on Capitol Hill. We're still going to be sending all of our people, our lobbyists and our advocates, to Capitol Hill to continue to advocate for policies. What policies do you think they're advocating for that don't involve giving the USCCB money and turning that tap back on?
That's it. Well said. Yeah, they say we're going to continue advocating for secure immigration process. I mean, continue. I mean, when did you guys start? There was so little. I mean, immigration system is a mess. Yes, there doesn't need to be legal processes. I know people waiting for forever. We get that. Let's focus on the people that are already here. But why was this? Why you guys were quiet as mice during the last 4 years of the open border? That's the reality. Okay. And I love one of the last lines too. We remain steadfast in our commitment to advocating on behalf of men, women, children suffering the scourge of human trafficking. Whoa, where did that come in? That was out of nowhere. Is that like just like to make you feel good at the end? Like, okay, yeah, you guys are a bunch of nice guys. Hello, the open border policy created that, helped create the human trafficking crisis. Okay, which you guys were a part of, which you guys helped of.
They completely were against the wall, the border wall. They were adamant against it. Why would you be adamant against a wall that prevents people from coming across the border in dangerous territory and encourages them to come across in legal ports of entry? Why would you be opposed to that?
True story. I talked about the wall about 2 years ago. I had a conversation with the bishop from a certain area. Okay. And we were talking, he's a good man. He's not a crazy liberal. And we were talking about Trump's policies and the wall and stuff like that. And I just asked him straight out, like, hey, what about the wall? And Bishop said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. It's a great idea. I said, well, why don't you speak up about it? He said, well, come on. Really? Basically, like, that's not going to be good. I'm like, yeah. That is like so perfect. Yeah, you have the Mark Seitz of El Paso who's just like, let's bring him in, right? Let's go. And then the other ones who know that it's wrong, like they know that President Biden and the other politicians receiving Holy Communion was wrong, but they're just quiet. Evil happens when good men do nothing. Okay, I said to myself too, I got to do more. Okay, we're not like the saints over here, right? But let's just call a spade. But so that's ended. We'll see if it, by the way, we'll see. We should revisit this, Michael. Do you predict, as you predicted, the markets would go back up? Do you predict that the cooperative agreement with the USCCB and the federal government under this administration or under a future one will be reinstated? Will the dates get back together again? Will they start dating each other?
Are Sally and Bill going to get back together again? At the end of the day, I think that we are seeing a paradigm shift in the church's relationship with the federal government. And it's gone from one that is distinctly cooperative to one that is antagonistic. And the more the bishops fight against this administration, it's going to get worse. That rift is going to grow. If we get a subsequent administration that's more friendly, like a Biden type administration, well, maybe that relationship might be patched. But I have to say, this is the problem of the church and the world. The church and the world are supposed to be at war. They are at war. The world is always at war with the church. It's just that members in the church don't tend to see it that way, and they would prefer that we were at peace and that we were cooperating. And by declaring that we are at peace, well, the world is going to continue waging its war against the church, whether it likes it or not. And I do think that what we are seeing now is the beginning of a rift that will get worse, and an antagonistic attitude that is only going to be exacerbated as time goes on.
Does a lot of harm. That's why we're so concerned about this too. It does harm with people's ability to distinguish what the one true church is, which is our Catholic Church, right? When they see leaders who are either silent or who are advocating for like the other side, it does a lot of damage to evangelization efforts. So that's why we're bringing it up. It's got to be exposed. I think it gives us as an institution more credibility to try to show like we don't agree with here, okay? And your excellencies, or not just bishops, but whoever are behind that, like let's maybe come back a little bit, right? So, what about this next report, Michael? So I saw this last night and had to throw it in the show notes for today. Title of the article: U.S. U.S. Christians risk deportation. A report released by the U.S. bishops in collaboration with Protestant churches and organizations, and we're going to name those organizations in a second here, highlight that 1 in 12 Christians in the U.S. are either vulnerable to deportation or live with someone who is. And they're calling, it's a big statement, okay? So I printed the whole entire document out here with their fellow believers. Over 10 million Christians, immigrants in the United States are vulnerable to deportation. Not vulnerable to having their souls lost, which is obviously the greatest concern which any of us should have, but it's about deportation, which is the ultimate evil here, including those with temporary protections that could be revoked, according to a report released by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, along with the National Association of Evangelicals, World Relief, and the Center for Study of Global Christianity. Nearly 7 million U.S. citizen Christians live within the same household of those at risk at deportation. 18% are Catholics, 6% are evangelicals, and add to the many others belonging to other faiths, the findings say. Okay, comment on that, Michael, this article.
So first of all, I'm not so sure about their metrics.
Right.
I would have to really scrutinize this document to see if their metrics are accurate or not. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say, okay, what they say about this document, or what they say about who is in danger of deportation, is true. We have to look at the criterion that was established by the Trump administration as to who they're going to be deporting. And the fact of the matter is, right now, they're just focused on people with a criminal background, people who have ties to gangs, people who have ties to unlawful endeavors. So, if you're going to say that 10 million people are in danger of deportation, then what you're admitting is that there are 10 million people who are involved with gangs, have a criminal background, or are engaged in unlawful activities. And if that's the case, then I don't know what you're complaining about, other than to say that you can no longer protect criminals.
Well said. The document itself is called Part of One Body, okay? And I'm just read parts of the intro. It's a 20-page document, okay? It goes into the whole thing of the Apostle Paul describes the church as one body. We got to be concerned about the other party. It goes in the Greek, okay? The word compassion from Greek means to suffer with. We got to suffer with, blah, blah, blah.
Time out, full stop. Time out.
Yeah.
So this document was co-written with Protestants. We are not one body. We are not.
We have to wonder if that's the first in the history where there's been an official document from the USCCB with co-authored or co-signed by, like you just said, Protestants.
Nope. No, it's not. The USCCB has been collaborating and cooperating with non-Catholics and non-Christians for a long, long time. And they have put together documents signed. I mean, this is kind of old hat since the 1960s. But the problem here is that they are saying they're making the case we are one body. No, we are not. We are not united in Christ with Protestants. And the reason we say that is because they do not believe in Christ in the Holy Eucharist. Period.
There you go. We are one body in Christ. If you believe in Christ, and Christ's words, like you just said, this is my body, this is my blood. So yeah, look at right off the bat, way to hit that one there. So it goes on that this has been long true of talking about President Trump's threat to deport 20 million people, blah blah blah, and then it's signed by. Let's go to these authors. I'm not too familiar with one of the four. I am Walter Kim, President, National Association of Evangelicals. Todd Johnson, co-director, Center for the Study of Global Christianity from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. And then you got Mile Green, president and CEO of World Relief. And then last but not least, successor of the apostles, Bishop Mark Seitz of El Paso, chairman of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Migration. You ever heard of these individuals, Michael?
Yes, the National Association of Evangelicals. Actually, they tend to be morally aligned with the Catholic faith when it comes to relief efforts. They are aligned with us on contraception. They are aligned with us on condom use. So that's good. I commend them for that. But they're evangelicals. They're not Catholics, so they don't believe what we believe. We can't support them financially in their relief efforts simply because they use their platform as a way of evangelizing people into their perspective of the faith. So if you are financially supporting them, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to financially support a false religion to bring people into a false religion. That's not good. That's actually the antithesis of charity. You're introducing people to individuals who are leading them down the false path. So that's a problem right there. But then you also have the Center for Study of Global Christianity, an organization that doesn't seem to have existed until now. I looked around. I couldn't find a website for them. They don't seem to have any kind of real foundation outside of this academic paper. So I don't know that they actually existed before this. And World Relief. I did a quick look into World Relief. I've known about them a little bit because of the investigations that we conduct regarding international aid and development agencies. World Relief is a pro-contraception, pro-condom use organization that goes into communities and they introduce people to this kind of stuff. I have a flip chart here that I discovered. It was published in 2022. We can put it up on the screen. And this, as soon as we get the flip chart, there it is. Yeah, look at this. You can see right at the top, USAID and World Relief. So those are World Relief received funding from USAID to create this flip chart for its particular project. Down here, it says Care Group Module 4, Family Planning.
With pause, a refresher. So World Relief, one of the authors of this document, received grants from USAID, which basically, as people are saying openly now, that it's been basically terminated, was the vehicle that the CIA and other agencies use to get money to places that they need to go to pay people off to do their work. Right?
Right. That's right. And if you look on the table here, it tells you everything you need to know about these flip charts. We're not going to show any graphic images of the flip charts because they're pornographic. They're pretty disgusting. But here on the table, you see implants, contraceptive implants first. You see an IUD next, going from left to right. You see a cervical cap. That's barrier method contraception. Then you've got the Femiplan or whatever you want to call it. It's basically the contraceptive pill. Next is injectable contraception, which is likely Depo-Provera. You've got the male condom, and I don't know what comes after that. But the point is, this front page of this document tells you everything that you need to know about it. We can look at the table of contents, which is on the next page. The table of contents shows us, okay, the acknowledgments for one thing, which explains that this was developed through USAID funding for World Relief's project called SCOPE. And right there, overview and benefits of health timing and spacing of pregnancy. So they're talking about not using the marital act and using forms of contraception in order to prevent pregnancy. So they talk about fertility awareness. Okay, fine, whatever. Lactation method. Okay, fine. But then you've got short acting methods of family planning, condoms and pills. Lesson 6, you've got short acting modern methods of family planning, injections and emergency contraception, which is an abortifacient. You've also got long-acting reversible contraceptives, implants and IUDs, and then you've got long-acting and permanent methods in the form of vasectomies and tubal ligation. None of this is negative. None of this is discussed in the negative, as if don't do these. This is all laid out as if these are your options. You know, you like going to McDonald's. What do you want to eat? We'll help you out. So that's world relief. The fact that the USCCB is partnering with an organization like this on something like immigration says that there's something grossly wrong with their discernment. Mm-hmm. The USCCB is obviously incapable of proper discernment when it comes to organizations that they want to partner with, and especially when it comes to a moral matter regarding what the church believes. Because if you're going to go to an organization like World Relief for moral foundations in immigration, their philosophy is wrong on this. It's going to be wrong in other places as well. We should be relying entirely on the Catholic Church and stop messing around with these organizations whose beliefs and ideologies are completely opposed to what we as Catholics believe.
It's that was a beauty. I mean, to show that partnership with one of the organizations who have penned this document with the bishops, right? That it's crazy when you look at what else they promote. It's important to just underscore some of the and Bishop's sites, so we can go to him and some of the controversial statements that he's made, but over the past few years. But this, I try not to just dismiss this document just on its face and trying to like halfway take it seriously, like, because they bring up some truly touching stories of individuals. These are souls. We always say this, so maybe I got to say it more. The people that have come across the border, they're not all MS-13. There's some really, really good, dare I say, saintly people, okay? That's independent of their, yes, criminal status, because you cross the border illegally. That's a criminal act, right? Yep. By definition. But, you know, like, let's just look at one of these here. I'm going to read this to you. You can throw up page 9 on the screen as I read this. Her name is Oksana Savka. Americans still ask Oksana whether the war in Ukraine is still going on. Oksana's husband passed her to church. I'm an open mind. Listen to this case. What should we do? What should we do as a Catholic culture? Oksana's husband pastored a church in Ukraine for 13 years, and their ministry was a model for any couple in church leadership. They hosted Bible studies, counseled married couples. She taught Sunday school. Okay. And then the war broke out. For the first 7 months of the war, Oksana and Peter hid in the basement of their apartment. They also helped refugees through their local church, providing meals and clothing to over 1,000 people, which, by the way, let's refresh. That war that you're talking about, the Ukraine war, that's what's becoming increasingly obvious, probably was we started it. We allowed it to start because the CIA was involved there and made it happen. And we kept funding it partly to cover for Biden and what he had done over there. So, okay, that war, that, you know, the warmongers continue to want to continue. And so, yes, that war. To their great relief, the couple escaped to the U.S. to join their daughter and grandkids in 2022. Now, Oksana works at World Relief, the organization that Michael just showed, helping other Ukrainians resettle, which provides a powerful bond for newcomers. Okay, wonderful. Oksana, here's her legal status. Entered through the Uniting for Ukraine parole sponsorship program and subsequently was granted temporary protected status.
Okay.
She says, I feel like Joseph from the Bible story. God sent me first. I still have this feeling that God prepared the whole way for me just to be able to help other Ukrainians. Oksana has mixed feelings watching the 2024 campaign. She recalls former President Trump's promise to stop the war, but wonders if he can accomplish that, but then kicks her out of the U.S. What then? Oksana sees many families who wish they could go back. Coming to the U.S. was not the dream of their life, but she says if there would be some kind of pathway to residence for those who want, people would really, really appreciate this. They can be very good workers and good citizens for the United States. I don't know how to prove to Trump and his administration we are good people. What do you say to that?
So this is a heart sob story. In terms of propaganda, the whole purpose of the story is to garner support for the agenda that you've set. The agenda that they set was established in the beginning. We want open borders. We want to be able to resettle whoever we want. Her status, she has legal protected status. She came into this country legally. She operated legally. She works here legally. And she's not in danger of deportation. And anybody who goes through the process, she said, oh, if only there was a process by which we could become citizens. Guess what? There is. There is a process. And the process works. People become citizens. I know many people who became legal citizens in this country by going through the process. It's a long process, but it's long for a reason. It's long because you can't just come into this country and establish yourself without integrating yourself. You have to be able to show the people of the United States that you are willing to put in the work, the time, and the effort to say, no, I don't just want to be here because I want to be here right now. I want to be an integrated, integral part of the United States and be a partner in the United States process. That's why the process takes so long. That's why there's money involved, because we need to see that you are actually truly committed and not just coming over here for a free ride.
Absolutely. And ultimately the safety too. You know, it doesn't need to be shorter. Yeah, I think it needs to be or shorter or at least streamlined, or it's people wait years for this.
It's 7 years.
Hopefully, yeah.
The process is 7 years. And the reason that it's 7 years is that, and I can't remember there was a reason, a rationale for 7 years, but I think it actually was based on the biblical,
was it? Come on.
I think it might have been. I think there was some big.
You're going to get called out for that, Michael. You're going to get called. Someone's going to say, Michael says it's got a biblical interpretation for why you have to wait so long.
Well, I think there was a biblical rationale behind it when they established 7 years, but
okay.
And I'd have to go back. This is history 101 from college. That was 30 years ago. So, but I do recall that there was some sort of biblical principle behind the process. But the point is that the process exists and it's long and it's not easy, specifically because they want to show that you're willing to really invest yourself in the United States and not just come here as a tourist.
And we're not discounting that these people are good people,
right?
At least the ones that they say, you know, that they perhaps have a legitimate reason to flee. But first and foremost, we are called just what our own household. That has to be in order first. Okay. That's what God asked of us first. After that, it's like look beyond. Okay. So Trump, thanks be to God, literally, who dodged a bullet. He is caring for the American people first, as we're seeing right now with the tariff war. Okay. It's the American worker. Let's care for them. I'm the father of this country right now. I need to protect these people first. Should we shift, Michael, to talk a little IVF really fast? I saw this story. I'm like, whoa. Talk about Brave New World. But we are nearing the end of this. I just got this. This is pretty crazy. Foreigners take advantage of America's unregulated IVF baby market. Whoa. Birthright tourism adds another moral and legal dimension to a simmering dispute between the U.S. bishops and the Trump administration. Okay, this is where, good. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, success for the apostles. You spoke up and congratulated President Trump for the going after the child mutilation. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Now you also address that, look, President Trump we need to pray that President Trump and his administration come full circle back to the horrors of IVF. It's immoral. We can't support this. But this is kind of crazy here. This just kind of shows you when you mess around with morality, it's going to create chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before God established created the world, the Bible said was chaos, right? Before God put order into the cosmos, there was chaos. The core argument advanced by President Trump and others opponents of birthright citizenship is that it has facilitated widespread abuse of U.S. immigration laws. Okay. An argument that has been dramatically reinforced in recent years through the utilization of IVF and surrogacy procedures by foreigners. Whoa. Here we go. A research paper from Heritage Foundation titled The New Face of Birth Tourism Chinese nationals, American surrogates, and the birthright citizen. Details how the lax U.S. framework governing surrogacy has allowed foreign nationals, especially the Chinese, to rent a womb from an American woman to gestate a baby created via in vitro fertilization. In courtesy of the currently prevailing legal interpretation of the birthright citizen provision of the 14th Amendment, U.S.-born children resulting from these IVF and surrogacy arrangements automatically gain U.S. citizenship. Dang, that's pretty brilliant. If you want to have a kid who's American, then there's probably there's probably an app you can choose your this is sick to even say it, like choose your mother of your kid, and you choose the woman, and you rent the womb. Sounds amazing, right? What say you, Michael Hichborn?
Oh, it's disgusting. I mean, but my big question is who's paying for this? The Trump administration is trying to do away with a lot of the anchor baby problems where people come across the border and then have a child in Tucson, Arizona, and then say, well, our child was born here on U.S. soil, therefore we're all able to come in and settle here. I know that he's in the process of trying to resolve that issue, because a lot of times you get people who do that. They come over, they try to set up shop by timing their trip to the United States so that their baby would be born at the time they hit U.S. soil. But at the same time, the Trump administration wants to pay for IVF fertilization. So now you've got a problem where the Trump administration is trying to resolve a problem with people who are coming into this country and establishing themselves through a flimsy legal process, and then paying for it to happen now also. I think that that's a huge problem, but it's also a
now, do we really know that they're paying for this, or was this privately funded? So
no, what I'm saying is that because Trump is now saying that we're going to have public funding for IVF, draw the conclusion.
Right.
If illegals are able to access our healthcare, and if IVF is now considered a part of the healthcare process,
there you go. It's true.
There's your conclusion. So, it's going to be a problem. And this is the problem of the United States government getting involved in medicine to begin with. I mean, it shouldn't be a thing. And we certainly shouldn't be having the government paying for healthcare. That's what's really driven up the cost of healthcare to begin with. But the added layer here, the primary component, is that this is a moral issue, because IVF invariably involves abortion. You're taking the creative process that belongs to man and God together, and you're putting it in the hands of a lab technician for the creation of a child through illicit means. And it's going to be horrible on many levels. And if we're going to have some sort of surrogacy tourism now, it's going to compound the problem that we already have.
Did you see how much money it costs? Did you read
No.
that? Okay, get this. Turns out money's a major motive.
Oh, I'm
Commercial
sure
surrogates can earn what a nice sounding word. Can earn up this. These are the moms who rent their
rooms out.
Can earn up to $60,000 for gestating a child for a foreign client. The Heritage Analysis points out. It's so sad. It's so sad for the kid's siblings who are left in petri dishes, right? Freezers. Just the spiritual effect of that too, as well. My goodness. Foreign clients similarly provide a lucrative revenue stream for U.S.-based IVF clinics and for the for-profit surrogacy agencies that facilitate arrangements between prospective parents, clinics, and surrogates. The birthright citizenship dimension comes into play because a surrogate child gains a birth certificate from the state in which the child was born, and with it the full rights of U.S. citizenship at birth. It's they do some estimates on numbers, by the way. It's hard because the hospitals don't really declare data for that, but they for immigration status of the child born there in the hospital. but they do estimate that, I'm reading this right now, that about 850,000 babies were born. I think 42% of those are Chinese nationals last year via IVF. It's like birthright citizenship debate aside, which is one happening right now regarding the 14th Amendment and the interpretations of that. It's just a sick practice.
Sure.
That we've got to end.
Well, how does it not constitute prostitution? And how does it not constitute trafficking in human flesh? Because what you're doing is you're purchasing a baby and you're prostituting out a woman's body. I don't see how it doesn't constitute those two things.
It absolutely is. It's just, yeah. So it's a reason why. Look, this is, people think, okay, so what are you going to do after the elections? Catholics for Catholics. What are you going to do? Help Trump get elected? Look, we got to be the voice. We got to continue to speak up for the truth in the public square. Okay, because newsflash, you're not always going to get the truth from your traditional Catholic areas of leadership, from bishops or whoever. We all have to collectively. There's a lot of us, a lot of different groups. So Lepanto, Lightlight, others that are Taylor Marshall does just great work. We have to continue to bring the full gospel, the Evangelium Vitae, to the public, to witness to the truth of what we have here. Should we end on a good note, Michael, talking about some positive stories?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to hit one of those? Or I saw those. I'm like, hey, this show's called Catholic Champion. Okay, at some point in the show, we want to highlight champions, people who've lived out the message of ultimately Our Lady of Champion in Wisconsin, and called that. And her message there, when she appeared in 1858, was to teach the children the faith, witness to the faith, receive the Eucharist every single day. That's what she asked in Wisconsin, right? So our show's called Catholic Champion from that apparition. So highlighting a Catholic champion, someone who's lived out ultimately Mary's message. Check out these kids, these high schoolers, okay? Up in Petoskey, Michigan. You ever been up there, Michael? Up in UP?
No, I've never been there.
Pretty much at the UP, way up north. Planned Parenthood announced April 2nd that it's closing 3 Michigan locations, Petoskey, beautiful area, Petoskey, Jackson, and Marquette, by the end of the month, citing funding cut by the Biden administration, no, Trump administration.
Yep.
Thank you, 58% of Catholics who voted for President Trump. Michigan news outlet reported that in addition to the 3 closures, Planned Parenthood is consolidating 2 facilities in Ann Arbor. The news of the Petoskey closure especially meaningful to a group of young pro-life advocates who had spent years, not just a one-off rosary rally, years, praying and protesting outside the facility. For the past 7 years, high school students from St. Michael High School, an independent school in the Catholic classical tradition of Petoskey, Michigan, had prayed outside the clinic. The school's headmaster, Kevin Weed, spoke in an April 7th interview that every Friday, a group of about 10 students and a few staff members sacrifice their lunch hour to pray the rosary outside the abortion facility. Many people are attributing the closing of the Trump administration's cutting the funds, which has, I'm sure, a big difference, said Kevin. But our students have been praying there, and those prayers have obviously been answered. However this came to be, we're happy that this facility is closing. How about that, man?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And it shows the power of prayer, that God may not answer right away in the immediate. And a lot of times I think that he was using those facilities for an opportunity for grace. He was saying that the people who were out there praying and advocating, holding signs over the years, that was their grace period to say, we can draw in as many people as we can so that they don't go through with this horrific practice. Now, it does also mean that there were people who went through with that horrific practice, but that opportunity for grace was there, and grace builds upon grace. And the closure of those locations, because of the grace brought by those who were praying and actually working for the kingdom of God in those locations, that's why they shut down. And I do not doubt for a moment that Our Lady her hand was involved in the closure of those Planned Parenthoods.
Hats out to those young kids. They're going to be great young adults very soon.
You
and
bet.
what a sign of hope too. And just that whole thing, how it happened. Yes, Trump cut it off. Prayers help. That's what we try to do here at C4C. It's prayer and action. We say it all the time, prayer and action. How does that play out? Well, Trump had to get elected, people. Okay. We had to push, we'd make the case for him, morally speaking, and then get to work, chase down ballots in 7 swing states. And then the prayer action that these young kids did. We had no part in this particular rally, but what those individuals do, they led with prayer. That's why we were in Mar-a-Lago 3 weeks ago. Catholic Prayer for America. It's got to start with prayer and end with action. Another just quickie at the end of this. Positive story, Catholic champion. J.D. Vance's mother celebrates 10 years of sobriety at the White House. Yeah. J.D. Vance marked a deeply personal milestone Friday, hosting a ceremony at the White House to honor his mother, Beverly Akins, for reaching 10 years of sobriety. Surrounded by family and close friends in the Roosevelt Room, maybe we can throw that picture up if you can find it there on the article. Vance delivered emotional remarks, fulfilling a promise he made during the 2024 convention to his mom. Okay, he said, well, here we are, and you made it, and we made it. And most importantly, you're celebrating a very, very big milestone. And I'm just very proud of you. Vance said during the ceremony, I'm going to try not to cry here. A devout Catholic and vocal advocate for family and faith, Vance, our vice president, reflected on the significance of his mother's journey. I meet a lot of people who think that there is no other side for those who suffer from addiction. But for many, there is another side. Sometimes, by the way, there's someone out there right now, there are people who are listening to the show that need to hear this message, because all of us are affected by addiction. We know someone who's been influenced, whether it's drugs, sex, alcohol, you name it. We have these wounds, but there's hope. Sometimes you get another opportunity with your friends and your family. Sometimes you get an opportunity to be a great grandmother, and sometimes you end up celebrating your 10-year medallion ceremony a couple months later here in the White House. So she battled heroin, alcohol, and she now works as a nurse in Cincinnati. How amazing is that, Michael?
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's wonderful to see somebody actually clean up and turn their lives around. And again, this is where grace builds upon grace, because JD, in his conversion to the Catholic faith and in praying for his mother, it's the story of St. Augustine in reverse. I think that his prayers for her have sustained her and brought her to the point where she can say, I'm 10 years clean.
And shout out to all those grandmas out there. We have a lot of grandmas out there who love Catholics for Catholics and pray for us every single day. It was his grandmother that really helped him, got him through, helped raise him, and pulled him through when his own mother kind of was incapable of doing so. So thank you for the faith that you all have. And yeah, I think it's a great way to close the show. Grace builds on nature. Okay, it does. And we're going to see that in a week and a half, ultimately, when Christ he was in the human flesh, and he offered up his human flesh, died on the cross that day on Good Friday. And we're going to witness that, live through that once again, through the passion, death, and resurrection of our Lord and Savior. It's a holy time of year, time to ask for special graces. We will see you again next week. This is Catholic Champion. Keep the faith. God bless you all, and fight on.